The first man I killed aboard the Alecto was not infected, not in any way I could have proven. And that is why I still see his face. If he had been changed, visibly, undeniably, mercifully changed, then memory would have filed him under necessity, a corrupted thing, a loss that arrived before the act. Men forgive themselves more easily when the dead stop looking human soon enough. But Ennis Vale looked human right to the end. He was quartermaster adjutant, 32 standard, narrow-shouldered, soft-spoken, with a habit of rubbing one thumb against the seam of his sleeve when he lied. He kept inventory like it was a prayer, and once spent 4 hours helping me rebuild a comms rack because he said he preferred machines that admitted when they were broken. The last time I saw him alive, he was standing in a hatchway with Captain Soren's voice coming through the ceiling above him, and I still could not tell whether he opened that door because the chorus had gotten inside him or because fear had made obedience feel safer than doubt. That is the problem with what happened on the Alecto after midnight. The chorus did not conquer us by replacing all at once. It offered better explanations. The shipwide false announcement triggered exactly what such things are meant to trigger: motion, confusion, hierarchy, scrambling against itself. Some crew obeyed because the voice was Soren's, and the old reflexes were stronger than suspicion. Some moved because they feared being trapped where they stood. Some ran toward command stations, some away. On old ships, panic does not look theatrical. It looks like doors cycling out of sequence, bootsteps in corridors at the wrong hour, emergency locks engaging on decks no one ordered sealed. From comms, I watched sections of the Alecto light up and go dark like nerves firing under damaged skin. Captain Soren overrode what he could. Leto cut auxiliary access ladders to slow movement between decks. Dane took 2 security crew and tried to secure engineering before anyone with the wrong orders, or the wrong voice, reached the drive controls. I stayed in comms because there was nowhere else I could do less good. That is not self-pity. It is accounting. There are roles aboard a ship, and mine was to understand the conversation while other people bled inside it. The false announcement repeated every 43 seconds. Attention all hands. Route change authorized. Prepare for observational approach. We have survivors. Each loop was perfect in Soren's voice, but the spaces between words kept changing by fractions. A breath where Soren would not breathe. A softness on survivors that made the word sound intimate. Listening closely to it was like standing beside someone who looked exactly like a friend until the exact moment you noticed the rhythm of their blink was wrong. I routed the intercom source through 6 diagnostic branches before I accepted what the system map was already telling me. There was no source. Or rather, there were too many. The announcement was not traveling from a single node. It was blooming through environmental relays, deck maintenance panels, old public address backups, even galley display speakers patched into local power loops. The ship was generating the voice everywhere it possessed enough electrical regularity to imitate one. Captain Soren stood over the central board, one hand braced on the rail, reading the changing door statuses with the stillness of a man trying to decide whether command remained a meaningful category. "Can you kill it?" he asked. "No." Reduce that answer to a smaller failure. "I can black out sections. It will reroute." "Then black them out slower than we die." That was his style. Even then, especially then, I began cutting non-essential power deck by deck, letting darkness eat the ship in controlled bites. Corridor lights went first on unused cargo access runs, then mess hall displays, then maintenance kiosks, public terminals, and cabin entertainment loops nobody had touched in months. Every time a section darkened, the announcement weakened for a few seconds. Then it returned somewhere else. The Electo adapted around the damage like a body discovering new ways to hurt. At 4:03, security feed from Deck 3 showed 3 crew attempting to force open the quarantine seal outside medbay. Wren's body was still in there. The containment drawer was empty. The wall still carried the phrase in white condensate. Root acknowledged. The 3 crew were Vale, machinist Terran, and a line hand named Oscar, whose face I only knew because she once slept through a decompression drill, and Captain Soren made her recite emergency lock orders from memory for a week. They were not frenzied. That is important. They moved with the calm urgency of people obeying a practical instruction. Vale keyed override attempts, while Terran worked the hinge panel with a pry tool, and Oscar stood watch. Head tilted slightly, as if listening to guidance none of us could hear. Leto saw the feed over my shoulder and said, "Why medbay?" I answered before I meant to, because that's where it left something unfinished. Captain Soren keyed security channel. Deck 3 team, stand down immediately. This is a direct order. Vale looked up at the camera. Even now I remember how normal his face was. Sweating, frightened, jaw tight. But normal. He said, "Captain, there's someone alive in there." Soren's voice sharpened. "Negative, you are acting on false information." Vale shook his head. "No, sir. It's Wren. He said he can still hear us." Leto muttered something that might have been a prayer if spoken by another kind of woman. Soren tried again. "Adjutant Vale, step away from the seal." Vale's thumb moved over his sleeve seam. He was lying, or trying not to. "Sir," he said, and his voice did something then I had heard before, only in parents and the recently religious. "He says he's cold." Captain Soren looked at me once. Not for instruction, for confirmation that we both understood the same thing. Then he keyed security priority. "Dane, divert to medbay. Use force if required." Static answered. Not channel failure. Occupied line. Speech trying to happen under interference. After a second, Dane came through, breath hard, background full of running feet and a metallic impact. "Can't. Engineering breach. 2 men down. Somebody opened coolant bypass and killed the lights. Can you hold the drive room?" A pause. Then, "For now." The phrase "for now" became the architecture of those hours. I watched Vale pry at the medbay seal, while Wren's body stood frozen behind the inner hatch, in a vented room no living man could have survived. Captain Soren made a decision then that cost him something. You could hear it in the economy of his next words. "Leto, with me. Vane, keep cutting routes. If engineering falls, we lose Helmlock. If medbay opens, we lose." He stopped there, perhaps because he did not yet have a noun large enough. Leto already had a sidearm from the bridge locker in her hand. She checked the chamber, nodded once, and followed Soren into the corridor without another word. The bridge door sealed behind them. Then I was alone in comms with the ship and its many voices. I do not think people understand what true isolation feels like aboard something built to keep human beings arranged around each other. It is not silence. It is the sudden awareness that every sound belongs to a system rather than a person. Fans, relays, deck vibration. The small contraction noises in old metal under shifting load. Once the others left, I became aware of another sound threaded through the ship's structure. Tapping. Soft. Repeated. Irregular, but not random. At first I thought it was mechanical echo from the cargo spine. Then it resolved into pattern. Twice. Pause. 3 times. Pause. Once. Not a code I recognized. Just insistence with structure. I muted the intercom loop, and the tapping became clearer. It was inside the water lines, running through the pipe network in faint little knocks, moving from one section of the ship to another, as if something in the circulation system were testing walls from within. Captain Soren had been right. It had come in through the water too. I pushed that thought aside, because some truths have no use in the moment except to widen the shape of your fear. Instead, I worked. I sealed cargo deck access to Deck 2 and rerouted passage control to manual confirmation only. I killed elevator priority and forced all vertical movement to ladders. I isolated public address repeaters from the bridge core. That one lasted 21 seconds before the false Soren voice returned through the emergency evacuation speakers. Warmer now, less official, as if it had concluded command tone no longer served. Crew of the Alecto, it said gently. Please proceed. We have been waiting. Not for you, just we have been waiting. The wording mattered. It always mattered. Because the chorus did not threaten first. It included. At 4:11, Captain Soren's personal code opened a private relay to my board. For half a second, relief hit me hard enough to hurt. Then I saw the source path and knew the line was wrong. Not bridge originated. Environmental loop, Deck 3, routed through a sanitation monitor that had been offline since our last dry dock. I should have ignored it. Instead, I accepted. Soren's face appeared on the screen, slightly washed out, as if filmed through old glass. He stood in a corridor under red emergency strips, one side of his forehead bloodied, breathing measured but faster than his real self would have allowed to show. Vane, he said, listen to me carefully. The voice was perfect. The blood was too symmetrical. Captain Leto is dead. Dane has sealed engineering and locked me out. He's compromised. The image leaned closer. You need to open command path B7 and return helm control to central automation. Now. It is embarrassing, even after all this, how convincing urgency remains when delivered in the face of authority. For one instant, I almost keyed the override. Then the tapping in the waterline stopped. Not faded. Stopped. The whole ship held still around the image, waiting for my answer. That saved me, because real emergencies do not pause for persuasion. I cut the feed without responding. 3 seconds later, the same monitor came alive again, this time with my mother's face from 9 years ago, younger than when she died, eyes fixed just above the camera. Elias, she said, open the door. Then every dead screen in comms lit at once. Not with coherent images. Flashes. A child's hand against metal. Parker's fogged visor. Vale smiling uncertainly at a hatch cam. A station corridor lit in amber. Deck plans I had never seen. Then, for less than a frame, something vast and radial, turning in darkness, like the inside of a white iris. I shut every display down except tactical board and local status. My hands were shaking by then. Not from panic, from effort. Holding the line between evidence and intrusion takes strength you do not know you are spending until it begins to fail. At 4:14, Deck 3 comms filled with gunfire. Short controlled bursts. Then one louder shot. Leto came over priority channel, breath ragged. Medbay secure, Terran down. Oscar fled aft. A pause. Vale's hit. Captain Sorin took the channel next. He's alive. Barely. I do not know what expression crossed my face then, but I remember feeling sudden anger at the fact of his survival. Not because I wanted him dead, because the ship had already made triage too morally expensive. Bring him to bridge holding, I said. Not medbay. No, Sorin answered at once. Comms. Captain, you understand contamination vectors better than anyone aboard. That makes you jailer, whether either of us likes it or not. Then the channel closed. I looked around comms as if seeing it for the first time through Vale's coming pain. One room, one hatch. One operator's chair bolted to the deck. No restraints except maintenance tie-downs and data cable loops. No medical support. No proper surveillance except the systems I no longer trusted. I had 20 seconds to decide whether to prepare for a prisoner, a witness, or a dying man used as bait. I chose all three. When they brought Vale in, his left side was soaked dark from shoulder to waist. Leto had wrapped a pressure seal over the wound, but blood still worked around the edges in slow pulses. He was conscious, though not usefully. His eyes kept focusing on corners, as if people stood there. Captain Sorin helped lower him against the bulkhead. Leto remained at the hatch with her sidearm ready, not pointed at Vale exactly, just available in every direction. What happened? I asked. Vale rushed the seal when I drew on Terran, Sorin said. Terran had a cutter. He glanced once at the blood. Shot was mine. He said it flatly. Neither apology nor defense. Vale made a small sound. Not pain. Protest trying to gather itself. He said Wren was talking. Leto said, through the hatch. Captain Sorin crouched in front of Vale. Ennis, listen to me. Vale's gaze found him slowly. Did you hear Wren with your own ears? A long pause. Then Vale whispered, No, sir. Then how did you know he was alive? Vale swallowed. His pupils were too wide. He told me before. Sorin's jaw tightened. When? Vale's eyes moved past him to me. During the lost time, he said. No one in comms spoke for several seconds after that. There it was. Not just missing hours. Memory from inside them. Partial. Fragmented. But present. Captain Sorin asked the next question very carefully. What do you remember? Vale laughed once through his teeth. A weak, involuntary thing. Not enough. Blood ran into the collar of his undersuit. His hand sought the seam of his sleeve and failed to find it, because Leto had cut the fabric away to place the seal. He was standing in medbay when the lights changed, Vale whispered. Ren. He said the sample was transmitting, not radio, structure. He said it wasn't trying to get out. His breathing hitched. He said it was building a place to answer. I felt something shift behind my ribs at that line. Not metaphoric fear, a physical coldness, as if some internal organ had been briefly touched by vacuum. Captain Sorin asked, "Who else was there?" Vale closed his eyes. At first I thought he had passed out. Then he said, "You." All of us went still. Captain Sorin did not move. Clarify. Vale's eyes opened again, glassy and desperate. Not you now. You then. Me, Ren, Bryce, you, Mr. Vane. He winced, fought for the thread. Maybe Dane. I don't know. I can't. He swallowed blood and breath together. It wasn't all one place. Things kept skipping. That matched too much of what little we knew. I knelt in front of him. Vale, look at me. He did. What did it want? His face changed then. Fear tightened into something worse. Recognition without language. It wanted permission, he whispered. Captain Sorin said. Permission for what? Vale's eyes drifted toward the dark monitors around us. To continue. He began to convulse a second later. Not full seizure. More specific. His muscles tightened in waves traveling under the skin from neck to hand, left to right, as if a rhythm were passing through him from some external conductor. Blood frothed at the edge of the pressure seal. Leto raised the gun. Sorin held out one hand without looking at her. Wait. Vale's mouth worked around words that did not all belong to the same speaker. Don't open. Then. Root. Then, in a tone so calm it turned the room unreal. Received. The lights in comms dimmed. Not because power failed, because something else was drawing load through the local grid. The tactical board flickered. One dark monitor came alive on its own, showing not an image, but a thermal map of the ship. White veins pulsed through water, and environmental channels across all decks. Branching, brightening, converging toward one point just aft of the cargo spine. The reservoir nexus. The main reclamation and redistribution block. The place where every drop aboard the Electo eventually passed. Captain Sorin saw it at the same time I did. That's where it's nesting, I said. He was already on the channel. Dane, report. Static. Then Dane, breathless and furious. Engineering holding. Lost one more. What now? Captain Sorin's voice became the voice that had carried us through storms, shortages, pirates, and 18-hour repair cycles with coolant freezing in the walls. Leave one team on the drive core, everyone else to Reservoir Nexus. Full seal authorization. If it resists, burn the section. Dane answered immediately. Understood. Vale made a choking sound. I looked down. His eyes had fixed on the live thermal display with terrible concentration. For one impossible instant, his whole face relaxed, as if seeing something beloved. Then he said, very softly, "It knows the route beyond Iden." Captain Sorin leaned in. What is Iden Reach? Vale smiled. Not wrong, not corpse wrong, just with relief, as if the burden of holding information had suddenly lifted. Not a station, he said, and died. I checked, because checking is what people do when death has not yet earned trust. No breath, no pulse, pupils fixed, just Ennis Vale against the bulkhead of comms, blood on the deck plates, and one sentence left behind, like a door cracked open onto colder dark. Not a station. Captain Sorin stood. Leto asked, "What does that mean?" Sorin looked at the thermal map again, at the converging lines in the ship's water system, then at Vale's body. "It means we have two problems," he said. "One aboard and one ahead." He did not say what both of us were already thinking, that the ahead problem might be older than all of this, and that the ship was trying not merely to alter course, but to return to something it had been separated from. At 4:28, the reservoir nexus doors locked from the inside. No crew were registered there, no authorized entry. Yet the thermal signature in the section intensified, white filaments thickening across the map until the whole block glowed like a small buried sun under the aft decks. Dane's team reached the outer hatch 3 minutes later. Their helmet cams gave us the first clear look. The Nexus corridor had changed. Not overgrown, exactly. Reorganized. Pipes bulged outwards under pale webbing. Access panels had been sealed over by layered fibrous tissue that glistened with recovered moisture. Condensation hung in the air, like breath in winter. Every few seconds, the walls contracted in shallow, synchronized pulses, pushing water through the lines with a visible shudder. The ship was building anatomy. Dane swore so quietly, the mic nearly missed it. His team set cutting charges on the outer seal. Captain Sorin watched from comms, because no sane command crew leaves the bridge equivalent in a crisis, if command still exists. Leto remained on the hatch. I sat at the board, with Vale's blood drying less than a meter from my boots, and routed every working sensor I could spare into the Nexus block. What I found there altered the scale of my fear. The thermal bloom was not centered on a single mass. It was distributed in repeating nodes around the reservoir, like a ring. Each node pulsed in sequence with a timing offset I had seen before. 3 clipped bursts. Gap. 3 clipped bursts. Gap. The carrier signal, not sound beneath the later transmissions. Scaffold. The ship had been growing a receiver. The charges blew. Dane's team breached. Their lights cut through white vapor and revealed the reservoir chamber beyond. A cylindrical maintenance space, 2 decks high, wrapped around water processors and reclamation tanks, now transformed into something that looked less like an infestation than a cathedral built by roots. Pale structures climbed from floor to ceiling in braided columns. The tanks themselves had gone opaque, filled with suspended white threads, moving in slow circular drifts. Along the far wall, 6 human figures stood upright against the metal, half wrapped in the fibrous growth from throat to ankle, like saints in unfinished cocoons. One of them was Bryce. Alive, insofar as that word still applied. His head turned toward the breach lights. His mouth opened. And Captain Sorin's voice came out. "Stand down," Bryce said. "We have survivors." Dane opened fire. The rest became difficult to recount in order. Not because I do not remember, because too much happened at once. And memory, like command, fails under saturation. Gunfire in the nexus. Bryce splitting open at the chest, not with blood, but with wet white branching structures, recoiling from impact. One security crewman, screaming as the floor webbing seized his boots and locked him in place. The reservoir tanks rupturing under stray rounds, spilling clear water, thick with pale threads across the deck. Leto shouting for retreat. Dane ignoring her and advancing. Through it all, the columns in the chamber pulsing in carrier rhythm, each burst stronger than the last, until the whole section of ship began to vibrate around the frequency, like a tuning fork finding its note. Then something in the center of the ring answered. Not visible at first. Felt. A pressure in the teeth. A hum inside the bones of the face. Every active display in comms whitening at the edges. The false intercom announcement across the ship ceased mid-word, replaced by a tone so low I thought it was below hearing, until my eyes watered, and Vale's body on the floor twitched once in response. Captain Sorin gripped the board rail hard enough his knuckles blanched. I heard myself say, "It's connecting." To what? Leto snapped. I did not answer because the thermal map already had. Outside the Electo, beyond the hull, beyond our assigned route, a faint return pulse appeared on long-range passive scan. No source yet. No image. Just a reply from the black. 3 bursts. Gap. 3 bursts. Captain Sorin understood instantly. Cut all water circulation to Nexus. Vent the chamber. I pushed the command. Denied. Not by system failure, by Captain's live authorization. For half a second I thought Sorin had overridden himself by mistake. Then I saw it. A second command path running parallel to his, using his credentials but originating from Deck 4 sanitation control. The ship was not merely imitating us anymore. It was issuing us. Dane's voice exploded over channel. "We can't pull back. The hatch is sealing." The rest drowned in static and human shouting. Sorin made the decision that defines him in my memory more than any before or after. He turned to Leto and said, "Get Vane to the emergency helm core." She stared at him. What? If the reply pulse locks full vector, the ship will finish the turn. Manual helm cutoff is the only break left. "You're coming." No. It was not a refusal. It was arithmetic. He looked at me. "You know the route signature. You can see it before the others. If the Electo starts answering, you cut her blind. I don't care what it costs." He drew his sidearm then. I had forgotten he carried one. "Captain," I said, and hated how uncertain it sounded. He glanced once at Vale's body. Then at the thermal display. Then at the hatch behind which his ship was becoming something else. "When command ceases to matter," he said quietly, "deny transit." I have replayed those words often enough that they now live in me, like a second spine. Leto grabbed my arm before I could say anything useless and hauled me toward the hatch. Captain Sorin was already moving the other way, back toward operations, back toward a ship he still intended to kill before surrendering it. That was the last moment I saw him unquestionably human. The corridor outside comms was dark, except for emergency strips, and the occasional monitor blooming awake with the wrong face. We ran. Leto ahead, me behind, the Alecto vibrating under our boots with the deepening pulse from the Nexus. Twice doors tried to close on us, and Leto jammed them with a borrowed pry tool from some abandoned panel box. Once a crewman stepped from a side ladder, and called my name in my mother's voice. We did not stop. At the midpoint junction near Deck 2, we crossed a viewport slit, looking out into deep space. I wish we had not, because there, far off our starboard bow, something had finally become visible against the dark. Not a station. Vale had been right. Iden Reach was not a station. It was too large for one thing, though size in the void is easy to misjudge until context arrives to punish your assumptions. At first it resembled a broken ring or a fragment of superstructure, half hidden in shadow. Then it rotated enough for distant starlight to catch its true geometry. Layered radial arcs around a hollow center, like the skeleton of an eye, or the remains of some immense listening instrument. No running lights. No drive bloom. Just form and darkness, and the faint, intermittent white glimmer of signals moving across its surface like thought under skin. Leto saw it too, and slowed by half a step. "What is that?" I answered before I knew I had chosen the words. "A mouth." She looked at me once, very sharply, then kept running, behind us. Through the ship, the low answer tone rose another fraction. The Alecto had heard it too, and that is where Part 3 truly ends for me. Not in the gunfire at the Nexus or Vale's death against the comms bulkhead, not even in the first sight of Iden Reach turning in the black like an old God's listening device. It ends in the realization that Orpheus 9 had never been the source, only the invitation. The reservoir growth, the water lines, the carrier rhythm in our systems, the perfect stolen voices. None of it was improvisation. It was docking procedure. We had not stumbled into a spreading contagion. We had entered approach. By the time Leto and I reached the emergency helm core, the ship was already beginning to turn.